participants. Thank you for everybody for this gathering. My name is Nofal Abdelhafiz. I'm the Palestinian ambassador in Russia since around 5 years. And it's a good occasion to explain what's going on in the area. You know, we are neighbor. We have a historical relation with Russia. Russia from the first countries to recognize State of Palestine. It was at 88, you know, which is more than 32 years. We celebrate that. They recognize Palestinian state at the border of 67 with Jerusalem as its capital, even before some of Arab countries. Therefore, we highly appreciate this relation. I appreciate this position of Russia. I want trying to simplify the situation, the conflict between Palestinian and Israeli. You know, I return back to the one thing which is very important if you are watching the media. At the beginning of this year, February 1st, this year, there is a press conference to the Minister Lavrov, Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, where he mentioned that why the international community sometimes doing the, double measures, double standards. He said the following, that 47, the international community, United Nations, the international community recognized two states, Israel and Palestine. From the day one, the state of Israel has been formed, and up to now, the international community is waiting the state of Palestine, which is showing the double standard where the international community, a lot of countries, they make different things. This message was very important for Palestinians, you know. Personally, I participate, after formulation of Israeli state, you know, at 47, it was a wave of refugees, Palestinian refugees, who left the country, forced left the country, to Jordan, to Lebanon, to Syria, everywhere. The Palestinian refugees all over the world are now, they are around 5.5 million Palestinian refugees all over the world. And we are in Palestine, historical Palestine, we are also around 7 million Palestinians. It was a good occasion where I participated in the Oslo Agreement. You know, the focal point in this issue was Madrid Conference 91, where the Russia also participated in this conference. And the international community, United States, Russia, Big Five, and plus some European countries, some Arab countries, and Palestinian and Israeli. In this conference, we participated through Jordanian delegation in the Madrid Conference. But it was a very important conference. By the way, in this conference, the Prime Minister of Israel was Ishaq Shamir, the more conservative man in this issue. But with Madrid Conference, it was a new page of relation to the Middle East. After that, immediately, we were hosted, me and Israeli, in Norway. You know, Norway hosted a secret negotiation between Palestinian and Israeli. And this negotiation had been around 8-9 months. Maybe it's a good or bad, I participate in this negotiation because I was in Tunisia in this time. I participated in this negotiation. And after when we finished, during this negotiation at the end, we also, some of groups are moved to Paris, which we signed after the political agreement in Norway. We signed an economic agreement in Paris. And all this agreement has been signed, as you know, at the gardens of White House, September 13, September 93 at the White House. And from the day one of this agreement, all this round of negotiation, all the negotiation between Israel and Palestinian has been controlled only by American. The American was only the sponsor of this negotiation. But the main issue in this thing, it was the following: that we are going for 5 years only, and after 5 years is a temporary period. After 5 years, we are going to speak about Palestinian state. But from the day one, we are recognize Israel at the 78% from all Palestine, which means we Palestinians, we agreed that the state of Israel going to be state at the 78% from all historical Palestine, and the 22 of the Palestine must be for the Palestinian state. Exactly, it will be according to the War of 67, and the East Jerusalem to be its capital. And from this day, a lot of international community countries recognize Palestinian state with this new formulation. They are recognized two-state solution, because it's the best way where the Palestinian and the Israeli can live in the two states as neighbors in the same area, and we can make together a lot of things. And around about 141 countries recognize Palestinian state, or at least recognize two-state solution, Israel and Palestinian state, and Palestinian state must be at the border of 67, and East Jerusalem its capital. And the 5 years had finished. I think you are so young, you don't know what happened, what's going on. At the end of the 95, the ex-Israeli Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, has been killed in the main square in Tel Aviv. And the killer of Rabin said to him, it is because you made an agreement with Palestinians, has been killed on that. And from this day, some big change happened in Israel. They are moved from the middle to the right side, you know, to the religious side of the question. And the 5 years, at least which we agreed, the Oslo agreement has been finished. Also, Paris agreement also has been designed for 5 years, finished. And the Israeli refused to recognize the state of Palestine according to the international community rules. 2002, if some of you know, has been created Quartet. The main issue for the Quartet was to create a roadmap, international roadmap. The Quartet, it was United Nations, United States, Russia, and Europe. The main issue of the Quartet was to create a roadmap, and this roadmap will be the final, this roadmap, 2 things, even 3 things. Two-state solution must be the main target. Secondly, capacity building in the state of Palestine. And 3, to put an end for between two brackets, the terrorists in the area. And even with the good recommendation of the international committee, where I mentioned more than 141 countries all over the world that recognize Palestinian state, Israel still refused to recognize Palestinian state. One spoke about swap, one spoke about a lot of things, you know, but they still, to avoid themselves toward any peace responsibilities. And after 25 years of negotiation, led by American, you know, to be frank with you, we stuck with the wall. Finally, you know, the United States had officially announced at the beginning of last year, you know, President Trump, that he have the deal, he called that the deal of century, which is we refused totally. And this deal from our side has been refused because the main issue of all our negotiation with the Israeli was 4 principles. First of all, Jerusalem. Secondly, refugees. Thirdly, settlement, and the borders, security at the borders. And these 4 issues from the day one, all the negotiation has been without any result. Therefore, I mentioned that we stuck with the wall, with the American, and With the American deal, they are saying the following, that Jerusalem must be the capital of Israel, and Palestinian capital maybe somewhere around Jerusalem. The refugees, there is no question of refugees that are living in Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, somewhere, they can stay there, but they have no right to back. The settlement must be also continue to be in the West Bank, and the borders must be controlled by Israel. And between this and that, we can ready to create, which we could put into a Palestinian state. And we must find a possibility to make these certain channels, to make a certain communication between Gaza and West Bank through the tunnel, through the West Bank, But the main issue, finally they are speaking that the West Bank, around 65% from the West Bank must be controlled by the Palestinian, and 35% from the West Bank must be part of Israel. And we, officially, we are refused this issue. We refuse the deal of century. We refuse the Israeli approach for the annexation. American from their side, America has been one of the most donors to the Palestinian Authority. Each year, the American, they are give us around $1 billion. It's not cash money. It is projects, It's projects, different projects in the health, in the road, in the capacity building, in the hospitals, education, a lot of things, But they stopped all this support. Now we are the third year, that the Americans stopped all this support, and we have never mind on that, because our rights is not for sale. I think you also heard that the main issue before a few months ago, that the Israeli politics about annexation of the Jordan Valley, we also refused. Not only refused, we stopped all the kind of relation between us and Israel, including the security cooperation, using the agreements, everything has been stopped. And also stopped the movement of money, our money in Israel. Also, we are now in the third month. Our money has been stuck in Israel. We are speaking about also around $1 billion. It is a difficult time, but as I mentioned, from us Palestinians, Palestine is not for sale. We continue our struggle. We believe now, we hope that three things must be very important. First of all, at the Palestinian level, we must do two things: that to keep life moving in spite of all difficulties, and they must target issues, they must challenge issues. It's beside our political problem, there's a corona, COVID-19, it is covered all over the world, and also impact is very bad. Therefore, we must keep the life by the normal way, the education, the health, everything, and also the reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas. We are in a certain process, to keep the life moving by the right track, even with the difficulties. The second challenge is how to create a certain support from Arab countries, mainly financially and politically, because in Arab countries there is which we call an Arab initiative. I also participated in that 2002 in Beirut summit. For anyone who don't know from your side, that the Arab initiative has been created 2002, and the main issue in this initiative that if the Israel recognized from the day one State of Palestine, 57 Arab and Muslim countries recognize Israel from the day one, which is an excellent deal even for Israel. But even though the Israelis refuse that, this is the second challenge. And the main idea in this issue, if the Israeli go into the annexation, the Arab will be withdraw their initiative. Therefore, any Arab countries can make a good relation with Israel if there is no Arab initiative. The third issue, which is very important, I mean, the international community in Europe, Russia, China, Japan, Far East, Muslim countries, African countries, they are not agree with that. To simplify the issue, not agree with the American deal of century, and they are refuse the annexation. All these countries who refuse this approach must be called for international conference, something like international conference. I mean, at least to impose the solution, at least to make a possibility to bring American to their square in this issue. We are in the middle, big battle on this issue. We are in contact with Russia, with the Security Council, with European countries. For me, one of the challenges is how to make the good opinion, the good relation between Russia and Brussels. Brussels, I mean European countries, in spite of some problems, some difficulties, at least they agree. They are against Israeli annexation. They are not agree with American deal of century. All these issues, we are at the middle of working with that. But the main issue, again, is the following. If there is no peace agreement between Palestine and Israel, there is no peace in the region. What's going on in Yemen, in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq is a part of what's going in Palestine. If the international community set an appeal to put an end for this confrontation, it will be reflect positively all the area. Otherwise, will be open the gate for the religious war, which is very dangerous. But then not only for the region, not only for Palestine, it will be very dangerous for all the international community. Therefore, we believe the international community is an appeal to it. I remember very well 2016, during the visit President Mahmoud Abbas here to Russia, when we met President Putin, we calling for the new international conference, where is the Big Five, and to create a new mechanism to control to lead the negotiation between us and Israel. And a few months ago, President Abbas sent an official letter to President Putin asking that Russia to call for the international conference in Moscow to create a new international mechanism with the Quartet, with other Quartet plus everything. We are working on that. But anyway, it is generally speaking, it's in the map. And we are at the middle of big struggle. But historically, again, in historical Palestine, I mean, we are exactly now around the 12 million, according Israeli statistics. 6 million Jewish and 6 million Palestinian. If the Israelis don't want two-state solution, let's go to the one state. But here, we need 50 of everything, not 22%. We need 50 from everything. The parliament, the land, everything. Therefore, the international community must do something in this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, His Excellency. So, dear colleagues, it's time for question and answer session. But it seems to me that His Excellency covered all my questions, unfortunately, maybe. The speech.
Yeah, starting with you.
Yeah. And before we will start, I want to remind you, dear colleagues, that for holding comfortable communication using online format, using Zoom conference, please, if you want to ask any question, use raise your hand function, or you can use our chat, and we can start. And before our colleagues will start with their question, His Excellency, I want to ask about the role of the Russian Federation in uniting different parts of Palestinian, Hamas, FAB, and how Russia work on it. Is it effective, or maybe Russia need to change a little bit its policy on this issue?
Yeah, we highly appreciate, as I mentioned when I started my speech, we highly appreciate the Russian position vis-a-vis all the Palestinian issue. But let me, concentrate the following, that Russia believe that we are right. We believe in the Palestinian people, believe in our right. They are recognized Palestinian state, as I mentioned, from the time of the Soviet Union, and they continue this recognition. and they did something to put an end for reconciliation. I mean, there is two, we gathered here in Moscow twice, at least I was in one in this negotiation, you know, last year. And we are in the situation now, there's maybe Russia also, the corona will be finished, yeah? We are speaking about that, that maybe also another meeting we are here in gathering here in Moscow, also to support, to help the Palestinian fraction to put an end for the consolation. And you know, a few weeks ago, there is a press conference between Fatah and Hamas.
Yeah.
It was very important message for everybody that at least we are agreed for two things. We are against American deal of century and against Israeli annexation. Therefore, it's a good gathering for that. And it's a message for everybody that the main issue, especially for Jerusalem, you know, nobody can from the Palestinian side and accept that. Therefore, we are moving, and not very fast, but we are moving to put an end for reconciliation. And the Russian role here is highly appreciated. There is, we are speaking about that, that maybe that, not maybe, I mean, more than maybe, you know, that when the corona will be finished, we hope very soon. We are planning also to gathering again in Moscow by the invitation of Russian government.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer, dear colleagues. Do you have any question?
Maybe Abdullah have a question.
Maybe now Irina Chipaykina. Just a minute, Irina. One minute, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hi. Yes. Dear Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your presentation. I actually had a small question about possible cultural and educational cooperation with Russian universities. I mean, your country with
don't hesitate.
with our universities. Yes. Do many students from your country come to study here? If so, which universities, which organizations they usually choose? It would be interesting to know.
I think Abdullah with you, maybe he will give you some information, but we have here in Russia, you know, since long time, two level of student, but at least we have around 1,200 students in Russia. 1,000, and in the different Russian cities, universities, from Druzhba Narodov to Gum to the, I mean, a lot of cities, around 1,200. And also we have around 300 military students also that are studying here in Russia. We have, as I mentioned, we have a historical relation in Russia, and we have in Palestine, Russian center, culture center in Palestine, in Bethlehem, and we are in daily communication on that. And I mean, we hope even the student in Palestine, in Russia, Palestinian student, maybe move forward more than. And in the meantime, we are encouraging the Russian side, because also we have around, not big, but around 11 universities in Palestine. We also invite Russian students also to join Palestinian universities. And we have some cases. We have around, I mean, 25 Russian students have studies also in Palestine before Corona. And also we are encouraging, we are also in process to exchange the visit to the student, preparatively, you know, from Russia to Palestine and the contrary. And we have an agreement on that. We have different agreements on that issue. Therefore, you are welcome. I appreciate.
Thanks a lot for such a detailed response.
So now I want to give to Maria. Maria, please.
Maria, you watched everything and you wrote a lot of things.
Sorry, some technical problems. Good afternoon, dear Mr. Ambassador. I was pleased to hear, to listen to your detailed talk about the ongoing situation in the Middle East region, and I'm extremely pleased to hold a conversation with a person who was the real witness of the most important international events which were aimed at paving the way to the Middle East settlement. And you know that nowadays, we all know the whole world faces the consequences caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. In this respect, I would like to ask you whether this situation aggravated the humanitarian conditions in Gaza. Did Palestine interrupt the cooperation with Israel completely, or did the government manage to support any interaction in fighting against the spread of the coronavirus in this sub-region?
You mean with Russia?
No, I mean the situation in Gaza and in respect with relations with Israel, Palestine and Israel.
You know, with Corona, it's an international problem. It's an international crisis, and even we started. If you're watching the media very well, we started even cooperate with Israel in this issue, with Israel, with Jordan, with Egypt, all the neighboring countries, because we with Israel, we are living in the same area, you know, which means if some problems here, left or right, it may be moved very fast. Therefore, it must be very comprehensive approach in this issue. Therefore, we are in certain cooperation, in spite of we stopped all the kind of negotiation, but we have in certain cooperation in this issue mainly. Maybe in this issue, we are because you know it's an international crisis. In the meantime, I mean, a lot of countries also support, including Russia, support Palestine in this issue. Unfortunately, it's a problem. There is a problem, and unfortunately, there is some bad cases in the area because there is some free movement for the people between us and Israel. You know, with Jordan sometimes. But I mean, we hope to put an end for this corona. I mean, at least to think about another things. We have a very difficult political situation. We have a economic situation. You know. And we need support in this issue. By the way, yesterday I have a good conversation with the Minister of Health in Palestine. She's a woman, and we are going to start negotiation with the Russian side if there is a possibility to start have this medicine that I spoke about. Yeah. Therefore, we need a cooperation even with Israel in this issue, with Egypt, with Jordan, as a neighboring countries, to put an end for this crisis.
Okay, thank you.
For nothing.
Thank you so much for your question. Dear colleagues, if you have some more questions, you can ask, please. So if not, I have one more question, if you let me to ask, Mr. Ambassador. I want to ask about the situation in Israel, not in Palestine, especially relevant with Netanyahu. It seems to me that Netanyahu used like a nationalist one, like populist, and tried to use a new annexation plan to gain again power, to maybe reestablish his authority in political field. What do you think? Is it possible if maybe Benny Gantz or another maybe more liberal, more soft person come to power, will it change the situation with Palestine? I mean,
You mean Netanyahu?
Yes, if Netanyahu go and someone more.
Let me explain. You know, I am aware. I have a good idea what's going on in Israel. You know, as I mentioned before, you know that the Israeli community, because you know Netanyahu and others, they are making some tools of treating the community. They are, we are endangerous. The Palestinians, they are terrorists. The Arab, they are terrorists. They are going to the sea. You know, I mean, there is a certain fear in Israeli community, which is not true. You know, there is a wise people, some wise people in Israel, they are believe that the best way is to reach a peace process with Palestinian. Otherwise, we both are going to the hell. You know? Therefore, I believe maybe now it's not the time, because now, you know, because the religious side in Israel, they are the majority, you know. Even the Labour Party, the Marriage, the others, they are very weak now. But after 2 years, we believe that things are moving by the right track. But now we believe the main idea, the main issue, it's not Netanyahu, not others, that the international community coming and saying that it's a dangerous area. The international community is saying that because it's a dangerous area, we must impose the solution. And the solution, it's right, you know, we are, as I mentioned before, we accept that the Israel, all Palestine is 27,000 square kilometers. It's less than Moscow. 27,000 square kilometers. We accept that 78% from its state of Israel, and we accept 22. And even with 22, we accept to move, which we call swap, some change, you know, some modification. But even though they are refused, otherwise we believe that, I mean, there is one case, if you remember, but you are so young for that, what happened at ex-Yugoslavia. Ex-Yugoslavia, it's a very important big country, but after with the Soviet Union has been finished, you know, also Yugoslavia has been there. Yeah. Here, the international community said that it's a very dangerous area, and we must put an end for the confrontation, and they imposed a solution. Yeah. And here we believe that the international community must said that the international community need to see a solution. The Israeli, they have no choice. They must recognize the Palestinian state at the border of 67 with Jerusalem as capital. I think it could be. Otherwise, we must wait some changing in Israel. I believe the changing is coming, but it will take a time. And I am afraid we have not enough time to do that.
Okay, in these terms, I want to ask you your position about the United Nations roles, because it seems to me that maybe last 5 years show us that the United Nations is not so strong. They don't have any ability to really impact on some serious question. For example, on maybe they will impose some sanctions on Israel, because Netanyahu, it seems to me that he's so free to speak about annexation, to speak about violation of Palestinian people rules, rights. What do you think about the United Nations role?
You know, I will tell you, according to our statistics, United Nations has been a lot of resolution with Palestine. Yeah. Security Council have exactly 86 resolution with Palestine against it, 86, but no one has been implemented. You know, General Assembly run about more than 300. Why? Because the American, they are totally stand with Israel. It is the question. Therefore, United Nations not in possibility to put sanctions against Israel, you know. But I mean, the international community, they are in position to have an international conference to create a new mechanism where the American have no choice either to be part of this mechanism or to refuse, you know. And if they refuse, they will be stand with Israel alone. Yeah. And the Americans, they don't want that. Therefore, I mean, let's wait a few months to see what the election will be happening in the United States, you know, and we will see.
So do you think that Biden really will change the situation and it will be more natural?
No. We need one thing. We need one thing. Even I have the question a few weeks with the media here in Russia. You know, we believe that if the Biden will be taken with the same, because I mean all the problems has been with the Democrats before. we need the international conference where the Israel, during this conference, recognize a state of Palestine, and we have no problem to go for negotiation another 5 years. But at least in writing to recognize with these borders, the 67 borders with East Jerusalem as capital, and to go for the negotiation. We have no problem. Otherwise, there's no problem. I mean, if the Biden, he will coming and also to make a negotiation with Israel to see what's going on. Like before, we refuse. We need, as officially, we need a new international mechanism. We don't accept that United States to be the only sponsor for the negotiation. We need the quartet only.
Okay, thank you so much, Safir. Maria, you have one more question, or?
Yes. Dear Mr. Ambassador, my question deals exactly with the Middle East Quartet, which you have already mentioned. So we all know that Russia, the UN, the European Union, and of course the United States are the members.
Again, please.
My question is about the Middle East Quartet.
Quartet?
Yes.
Middle East Quartet, yes, and no doubt that unilateral steps, I mean the attempts of the United States to impose the deal of the century, they are leading to deadlock in negotiations. And what kind of international mechanism exactly do you see which will lead to the Middle East settlement and fruitful negotiations between the states?
You know, the question with the quartet and the American deals, it's very complicated because the American, we tried with the Russian side, to be frank with you, we tried with the Russian side to make an appeal for the quartet. We met Minister Lavrov and Bogdanov, and we spoke about that, and there's certain appeal to do that. The American refused to speak about anything except their paper, deal of century. And United Nations, Russia, Europe, they are against that. But the Americans, they refuse to participate. When they refuse to participate, there is a problem. You know, we are speaking about, let's go to the Troika plus, Troika, which means Russia, European country, European Union and United States and some other countries. But without American, also it's a problem. Yeah, they continue their support. Now we are thinking with the Russian side and with a new approach, and more or less, we are thinking about if there's a possibility to make certain appeal for the Big Five. I mean, Big Five, you know what you mean, Big Five. United States, Russia, China, Britain, and France. The Big Security Council. Yeah, Security Council, Big Five, plus the quartet, plus some countries, some Arab countries, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, some others, and to make certain negotiation with this, separately with Palestinian and separately with Israel. To have certain, there is a different ideas we are speaking about. But our principle is the following: we refuse the deal of century, we refuse annexation, we stopped any kind of relation with Israel for that, and we need for us no more negotiation led only by American. We need international conference with a new international mechanism. If there is, it's welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
His Excellency.
For nothing.
Yeah, we have one question from Mariana Semenyuk. Dear Ambassador, thank you for your lecture. And I'd like to ask you about demographic situation in Palestine. According to statistics, it's observed population growth, but all we know about big migrants flows to other countries. Well, how can you define the demographic situation? Mariana Semenyuk from Moscow Lomonosov University. Lomonosov Moscow University, State University. As I understand, it's about how you deal, the authority deal with migrant flow from Palestine, that according to the statistics, we can see big a huge amount of population which will continue to grow, and how can you define the demographic situation?
You know, as I mentioned before, in historical Palestine, we are around 12 million, according to the study. There are 6 million Palestinian and 6 million Jewish. And we have around 6 million also in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Syria, in the Gulfian countries and everywhere. We are, in Palestine, you know, we have in Gaza, we have around 2 million in Israel, around 1.8 million in Israel. They are Arab, but I have Israeli citizen. And in the West Bank, we have 2.5, around 3 million, you know. And other, in Syria and Lebanon and the other camps, we have not communication. No, they are Palestinian. In Lebanon, in Syria, they have transit passport, Syrian, you know, but it is Palestinian. In Lebanon, the same thing. In Jordan, they are Jordanian, but with Palestinian origin, because the majority are in Jordanian. You know, the main target in this issue that we are with the Israeli during even the Olmert, the last negotiator with the prime minister, we reached approximately an agreement. We spoke about that. We finished about Jerusalem. We spoke about the refugees, that few tens of thousands must be returned back to the homeland. You know, the refugees he don't want to back. They can stay where he want to stay. We discuss all these issues. It's a very complicated issue, but the Palestinian Authority, who are dealing with all the Palestinian refugees everywhere.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope that we covered your question, Mariana. Now I want to give floor to Oksana Shemraeva. Oksana, please, the floor is yours. You want to ask something because you raise your hand. Oksana.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear Mr. Nofal. Thank you very much for organizing this meeting. I have a short question about the World Trade Organization and Palestine. Mr. Nofal.
What World Organization? What?
World Trade Organization.
World?
WTO.
The WCO.
Yeah. How do you assess the prospects of joining this organization? Is it important nowadays for Palestine to join WTO?
We are, you know, the problem with this organization, because before I was the Deputy Minister of Economy, which is familiar with this issue, you know. Since 2012, where the International Committee recognized the State of Palestine, we starting to be part of a lot of international community. You know, one of that, you know, we have an agreement with 81 countries against terrorists, an agreement. We have, you know, with a lot of international communities, we are part of that. But there are some communities, organization, you know, you couldn't be part if there is all the country accept that. And WC, one of them. I mean, if the Israeli refuse, I mean, like the decision in European countries now, European Union, if there is a decision and some European, Poland, Hungary, Lithuania refused, there is no decision, you know? And this organization must be all the country must be recognized, that must be accept, and therefore it is one of the obstacles that we are not part of this organization.
So how do you see the prospects? Is it possible?
During my working, it's a difficult time now, but we try even. This time it was the Quartet, Tony Blair. We try to be that intermediary between us and Israeli, that at least that they are not voting against to be part of this organization. But we are trying to do that always. We participate, we're trying, but we are not voting on that organization.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oksana, for your question. Dear colleagues, if you have any question, please ask. We have only 10 minutes left.
Yes, please, if possible, one more
Of course,
question.
yeah.
Mr. Ambassador,
So much.
in February 2019, so last year, Moscow hosted a Palestinian summit with the senior representatives of all primary Palestinian factions, including Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. But unfortunately, the summit failed to persuade the last ones to sign on the proposed Moscow Declaration. But by the way, did it pave some positive way to further and deeper ties and mutual understanding among the Palestinian factions?
So, what do you think about personally?
I hope yes.
As I mentioned before, it's a very complicated issue to speak about. But I mean, for you, because I mean, we believe, deeply believe, what happened in the area, it's made by Israel. And the reconciliation, it's one of them. I mean, what happened in Syria now, you are watching what happened in Syria, in Lebanon, and everywhere. It is made by Israel. And also the reconciliation, it's happened with them. Even if we're trying to do it, but even though we try to close the eye in this issue, we are agreed with the Russian initiative to do that. And as I mentioned before, maybe after the Corona problem, we are gathering again in Moscow to create a good environment, because all the fractions are believe on Russia, yeah, and we will hope to do something. Dai Bogu.
Okay.
Inshallah.
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 Okay, dear colleagues, if you have questions, we have time for one more question, and after that we should come to end. Please.
Okay, it can be me again one more time.
You? What?
I'm sorry, Mr. Ambassador. This is my last question as well. Last year, on the 29th of November, Russia and Palestine celebrated the 45th anniversary of our diplomatic relations. So, and in this respect, I have two small questions. How do you find the near future of the relations, which are extremely important for the both sides? And the second one is that during one of your last interviews, you mentioned about the possible establishment of the Palestinian Commercial Center in Moscow. So what are the prospects for this plan?
It's very, very, very good question. The first question, yeah, I mentioned, we highly, not because I am ambassador in Russia, we highly appreciate the Russian position since long time. As I mentioned, they are recognized Palestinian state at 88, whereas before a lot of Arab countries even, which is a strong message for everybody. That the Russian side, they are with the right to Palestine, except that, we know that Russia have a good relation with Israel, even, because we know around 2 million Russian, who have the Russian passport are living in Israel. We know that, but in spite of that, Russia standing with Palestinian rights, they are recognized. But I remember very well the last visit to President Putin, when he visited Israel and he visited Palestine in Bethlehem. I was there, and he said that in spite of all difficulties, we recognize Palestinian state at the border of 67 with East Jerusalem, its capital. All the Palestinian factions highly appreciate that, and we continue to do that. And every day, as I mentioned before, when Mr. Lavrov mentioned the 1st February this year, with the double standard with the United Nations, resolution, that from the 47, there is a resolution for 2 states, Israel and Palestine. From the day when there is state of Israel, but up to now, we are waiting the state of Palestine, which means a double standard, Therefore, this relation is deeply, and we believe in that. I will tell you, in Palestine, that in spite that we are small countries, we have around 9,000 family Russian Palestinian, which is around 9,000 Russian women married by Palestinians, which 9,000 families in Palestine, Russia, which means we have a good relation. We are around about 35,000 Palestinians who finish their degree in Russia. There is university in Russia, which means we can speak about a lot of kind of relation between Russia and Palestine. And we, from the president to the last one, we highly appreciate this relation. Regarding other question, what you asking? Last
about
question.
the Palestinian Commercial Center in Moscow.
Yeah. It is very important. It is my feedback. I'm an economist. I believe in that. I promise you I will do that. But I mean, when the situation will be, because it's in my heart, in my idea, I think we can make a lot of things in this our trade relation. You know, we have a small country, small possibility, but nobody knows that we have run about 7 Palestinian pharmaceutical factories have the GMP, which means we are export. We don't believe that we export medicine to Germany. You know, we have 2 factories in Malta at the gate of Europe to export to Europe. I mean, we have a good possibility. Maybe you think, you know, the biggest factor of marble and stone is Italian or Spanish, but the biggest one all over the world is Palestinian and Bethlehem. The biggest all over the world is Palestinian and Bethlehem. Yeah, they have 3 airports in Maryland, in America, Orlando. You know, which means there is a lot of possibility. In the meantime, there is a lot of things in Russia we can import to Palestine. Therefore, the economic center, I think it's not a good idea. It's an excellent approach, and I promise to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, His Excellency. Thank you so much, Maria. I understand that you like so much Palestine.
Yes.
It's really great, because me too.
Come to visit me, Maria.
With great pleasure.
Yeah, please.
Okay, His Excellency,
With our friend,
I think it's
come
time.
to visit me with Maria.
Okay, inshallah. Just tell me when it will be
Please.
comfortable for you. We will come. Okay?
Please, please.
So I think it's time to end our meeting, and I want to remind you that this meeting held as a part of Russian Middle East Association, a special project, Ambassadorial Meetings. And thank you so much, His Excellency. You are a good friend of our association, and it's a great honor for us to see you, to communicate with you, because you are like a spring. We can get an actual information, novel, really interesting, because unfortunately there are a lot of, how to say, not covered information, not only in media, but also in our textbooks in universities and schools. And I believe that our today lecture will be interesting for our colleagues, not only for students, but also for public person, for a person who really like Middle East and especially deal with Palestine. So one more time, thank you so much, dear colleagues. Thank you for you to be with us. It was really great pleasure, and I think that you enjoyed with this meeting.